Tom, you've been covering this horrific murder and the follow-up. So tell me about the suspect. What do we know about him?
Well, the individual, Shane Tamura, comes from Las Vegas, Nevada, and apparently drove himself across the country. Seen in New Jersey yesterday on I-80, presumably moving eastbound towards New York City. By the way, big question among law enforcement is whether or not traffic yesterday delayed him from getting into the city. Could this have been so much worse if he was able to get to that office building prior to 6:27 when this shooting, according to the NYPD, happened last night? Modified assault rifle is the primary weapon, the weapon he used to kill the civilians and, of course, a New York City police officer. So that's what we know about that. We also know in the car they were able to find a revolver that was apparently registered to him, as well as 2 cell phones. So they'll be digging through that. But on his person, they find a note.
Tell me about the note, because does that give them any hint of motive?
Yeah, I think it has helped them out in understanding why he thought he needed to do this. So in the note, which we'll just kind of generally describe, it's 3 pages. 2 of the pages are kind of like in a day planner. There's 2 different types of inks that he's using. There's some general notes that he puts out there. There's an apology to somebody in there. There's a reference to a former NFL player. Then there's a 3rd page that that comes from a spiral notebook. And so that's what they find on his person. Basically, what I think it tells them is that this person thought that they had CTE, which of course is a documented brain injury that's impacted so many athletes, certainly a lot of former professional football players, and that he had CTE as a result of him playing football. Is there any documented information at this point that he actually had CTE, the person who's responsible for this shooting? There's nothing out there yet that suggests that that may be true. And of course, Andrew, as you know, whether he had CTE or not, there was no excuse or reason or motive truly to be able to go into an office building yesterday and kill innocent people.
And right in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. So what are investigators now looking at?
Well, I think investigators are going to be focusing on a couple of different things. One, it's the NYPD Detective Bureau. They're going to do a timeline. We saw it in the case of Luigi Mangione, and I don't mention that out of the blue. We're 7 barely months from a high-profile shooting involving an individual that may have had an issue with a corporation because this person, Tamura, referenced the NFL. That's where the NFL is located. So they're going to continue to look into motive, the timeline, and then there'll be some questions, as there always is, about 2 things when these type of shootings happen, because they said he has a documented history of mental health problems. So was there a point here where the gun should have been taken away, where the concealed carry permit should have been canceled? The second thing I think that they want to figure out here is, did anybody help him with a gun? That's always something that they do in these shootings. They certainly don't want anybody else out there that could be helped by an individual in getting a gun to commit an act like this. So that's always part of an investigation, and that'll be done with the NYPD. They have a task force that looks into that, along with the ATF. They'll team up on those things. And the NYPD and the Las Vegas Police Department have a great relationship when it comes to these type of high-profile incidents. These are 2 organizations that have tremendously high-profile venues and events and things in their cities. You talk about Las Vegas and New York City, you can bet that they're going to be working together.
Well, and I know you're all over this, and thank you so much for all your coverage, Tom.
Of course. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Gupta. Let's talk about CTE. First of all, what is CTE?
Well, CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, Andrea, and people usually associate it with contact sports like football, where, especially with former NFL players, those that have been hit in the head repeatedly. But this is a condition that essentially slowly deteriorates and destroys the brain, and it's strongly correlated with contact sports.
And can it be diagnosed before someone passes without the autopsy?
There are a set of symptoms, Andrea, that we've seen associated with CTE: mood disturbances, just inability to function, so your executive functioning, cognitive abilities, especially at a younger age in the middle of life, tend to decline quite quickly in a former, say, NFL player. And so there can be a signal or a sign that maybe something might be happening here, but we can't definitively diagnose it.
We don't know what's happened in this case, in this terrible case, but the suspect did leave a note and did reference NFL sports, referenced Terry Long, the Pittsburgh Steelers player who died by suicide.
What we do know about Terry Long's case is, one, it was a tragic case. of suicide. The fact that he's referencing it comes from a contact sports history. Unclear if there is that link, but that, for your audience, really critical to recognize that right now, the only definitive diagnosis for CTE in somebody that, say, has a contact sports history is autopsies. It's different from Alzheimer's and other types of neurodegenerative diseases. It requires a tissue diagnosis on autopsy. But again, we're getting better at clinical symptoms that might herald CTE, that might allow us to early support people that might be at risk for, say, suicide and severe outcomes. So we're getting better at the clinical diagnosis, which hopefully means we're getting better at supporting especially former players that might be at risk.
You're the parent of 2 boys. Do you have any advice to other parents?
We take a firm stance on this in our household, which is no contact sports, and where there's a risk of injury to the head. And I think that others have a different calculation. My wife's a pediatrician. We've just seen too many bad incidences. What I would say is, if have an open conversation with your medical provider, with your child's medical provider, their pediatrician, about the risks associated with a contact sport like, say, youth football, that's tackle. There's flag football that tends to be better, but know the risks and know how to prepare yourself and your child for ultimate sort of maximal protection, because it's ultimately on individual parents and their children to make sure that they're staying safe.
Dr. Vin Gupta, thank you so very much.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.